Skirk is the brand new 5-star coming to Genshin Impact for version 5.7. She is set to be one of the strongest on-field DPS that Genshin has ever released, but her team restrictions are extreme, restricting her to just Hydro and Cryo characters. In this video, we're going to go over all of Skirk's pros and cons, her pre-farming and build guide, a tier list for all of her best teams, talk about her playstyle, pros and cons, to help you decide if you should get Skirk, and how to make the most out of her if you do. Welcome to Cello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. I want to get one thing out of the way right away. I'm going to sound very excited in this video. That's because I'm very excited for Skirk. She is possibly my favorite design in the entire game, very likely my favorite overall character in the entire game. So I'm going to be sounding excited. In addition, she looks to be extremely strong if you can put together her Exodia team, and I will be talking about that and talking her up and how strong she is. However, I wanted to put this right up front because she is not a meta pull. That's right, she is the second strongest DPS and she is not a meta pull. You need to skip her if you are considering getting her for meta. You only get Skirk if she is a character that you really love. That you see this character, you see her animations, you say, wow, I love that character, I want to play that character as my DPS. She is not ever a character you get for meta, because just like every single DPS except for arguably Mawika, and I would argue Mawika, there are no meta pull DPSs. The reality is they're just going to keep releasing stronger and stronger DPSs in various niches, and it's much more important that you find a DPS that you really like, as long as they're at least reasonably good. If your favorite DPS is Eula, then that's a little bit rough, although there's still some things you can do. But generally speaking, don't just get distracted by new, shiny, big number, must-pull meta character. I do want to just address a couple things on the other side now, though, because some people say, oh, well, she's an easy skip because she's too restrictive. Most characters have a support that they really rely on. Skirk definitely relies on Escoffier the most out of probably any character relies on their support, but she does still hit around 85k DPS, 80 to 85 depending on the team, even if you don't have Escoffier, which is still in the realm of very good DPSs. If 85 DPS came out in Fontaine, that was considered a top meta, a very high meta, if not one of the best DPSs, if not the best DPS in the game in the early Fontaine era, like just around Farina level. So 85k DPS is totally fine. It's just that she gets a massive, ridiculous improvement from Escoffier that she will not feel like at all the same character if you don't have Escoffier. So those are a couple things. Next of all, some people saying she's going to be power crept very soon in Nodcry. First of all, just remember that Nodcry is not the cryo region yet, and in my opinion, she has about a 50-50 chance of either being buffed or power crept, because right now she has kind of an open flex team slot. Farina and Escoffier are kind of must-haves in her team. The fourth one is very flex, and lots of them are very similar in terms of options. So she has a very good possibility of being buffed, and a possibility of being power crept, and it could be both. So again, all this to say, do not pull a DPS for meta. Pull them because you like them, and I feel like I do have to say that because she is really strong, but I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Moving on to her pre-farming guide. She's going to be using those Fontaine gears that you have so many of that none of your characters have used, so that's pretty darn awesome. She uses these flowers from the newer area in Natlin. She uses the papilla, obviously cryo gems. Although, fun fact, from the live stream we learned that she is not of the cryo element, she simply disguises her element as cryo, which, although is extremely cool, it is also extremely funny that her kit restricts her to cryo and hydro characters when she's not even actually cryo. So I found that extremely funny. She uses the Sun Natlin books, the chess piece, new weekly boss, and yeah, that is Skirk's pre-farming guide. You may also plan to go for her weapon, in which case she's going to take the Natlin whistles, the Natlin shapeshifter void thingies, and then the mirrors. So make sure you go ahead and save those up if you plan on getting her weapon, which looks fantastic, by the way. For her talents, you'll want to focus most on her skill. That is where the majority of her scaling will be from. You can leave her normal attack at level 1, and you can also level up her burst, because her burst playstyle is going to be very useful to finish off chambers or defeat certain phases of bosses for certain multi-wave content. Her burst or hybrid playstyle is going to be very, very useful. If you're wondering what I mean when I say her different playstyles, it's very actually simple. She uses her skill to enter this 7 flash whatever state, and this will allow her to have these cool infused normal attacks. While in her skill state, you can use her elemental burst to put on this really cool outfit, and she gets even more amped up attacks. To use her burst, she will need Void Rifts. Void Rifts are these little things that appear on the battlefield as a result of your Hydro or Cryo characters dealing Hydro or Cryo damage. But in practice, you don't really have to worry about that. You just fill your team up with Hydro and Cryo characters, use her skill, then use her burst, and then go to town normal attacking. When you hold her skill instead of tap her skill, then she flies around like a mermaid, and that will consume the Void Rift. So when you tap her skill state, she gets a bonus damage from having them there. And when you hold, she goes into this very cool mermaid state, flies around the battlefield for a quick second, consumes the Void Rift, and then she's able to use her full elemental burst. So she basically has 2 kinds of elemental bursts. This one is the other one where she goes the mermaid, then she uses her big elemental burst. Both are very powerful, and both are very viable. You won't be doing them both every rotation, though. That's the kind of thing I'll talk about more in her actual guide, but just so you have an idea of what's going on, that is the basics of how her kit works. And that's why leveling up her skill is more important, because that's the main source of damage, and then the burst is sort of an alternative way to do damage, either as a burst DPS on like a Novelette team or something, or again, like I said, to finish off an enemy, or to burst down a phase of the boss, like the first phase of Megu Kenki or the first phase of the PMA or something like that. For artifacts, there is a lot of debate going around as to whether her signature set or whether the Marishise Hunter artifact set will be better for her. This is basically how it's going to go. For most players, Marishise Hunter is the best thing you can farm. Most players are going to get good enough builds, and it's going to be much easier to get good enough builds with Marishise Hunter. Most people are going to be running her with Farina, and so overall, this will be the best. And for good enough builds, even medium, high investment builds, Marishise Hunter will be the best. At very high investment builds, or for the burst playstyle, or considering an average of bursting and non-bursting, depending on how it ends up going when we actually play her, her signature set might actually come out on top for those of us that are like chasing the high ranks of artifact farming. Like if you get really, really good pieces, if you're regularly getting top 5% on Akasha leaderboards for having really good builds for your characters, what you're going to start seeing is it's getting very, very hard to get only crit damage rolls and to get tons of crit damage and attack rolls. You're going to start overcapping on crit, especially if you have her signature weapon. It's going to be very difficult to not overcap on crit. And just overall, when you get really high investment, it's likely that her signature set will outpace Marishise. However, she does have a Constellation 1 that we'll go over more later, but basically it gives her a new type of damage that is charge attack damage. And unless that's changed from the beta, that charge attack damage won't be boosted by any part of her signature artifact set. So it's looking like if you have her Constellation 1, Marishise might actually just take the lead again. That's not to say that it will be bad, but it's just something unfortunate to consider. All this to say, however, her signature set, no matter which way you slice it, versus her signature set and the Marishise, they're really only within 2 to 5% of each other, maybe even less, 2 to 3% in either direction in any of these circumstances. So overall, it really is just better that you go for whichever one is best for your account. Marishise is in the Golden Troop domain, so if you want to farm Golden Troop for your Escoffier, for your Farina, it could be much more efficient to just farm the Marishise Golden Troop domain. You may already have Marishise artifacts. For me personally, after farming this domain for a while, I do have a good set, and it is better than my current Marishise set for her, even after farming the Marishise domain for longer, because it is really hard to get those perfect rolls. So overall, the wrong circlet though. Overall, I have been able to farm 2 sets, so I will compare them both in my post-release Skirk guide, and you can get an idea there. The other thing to consider is that the finale of the Deep Galleries doesn't need Farina to activate it. You always need Farina to make this set any good at all. So if you're fighting in Imaginarium Theater, if your Farina happens to be on a different team, if you're using her in the overworld without Farina, then this set is going to be leagues better than Marishise. Also consider, depending on the crit rate buffs that you end up getting, like if you end up with C4 Mona, that's 15% crit rate. That makes Marechaussee even worse. And maybe we get a crit damage buffer in the future. Again, there's just a lot of things to consider. Overall, just go with whichever one you want. Both are going to be fine. Both have pros and cons. It's really annoying that there isn't just one that's like, hey, this one's always way better. Go for this one. But that's why I farm both, so I can test them both and let you know how it goes. Next thing to consider is her weapon. This is the Genshin Scientist, my goat, one of my good friends. He's linked down in the comments if you want to go check out his video. He has a video on Skirk's teams and the DPS that they calc at, which I have referenced already, and I will reference more in this video. Definitely go watch the full thing. Super worth it. This is from his Skirk guide. Her signature, calcing about 15% better than Haran and Jade Cutter. Again, this is assuming that you don't overcap on crit, which is hard to not do. Her signature gives 10% less crit than Haran, in exchange for other buffs, of course. It's about 16% better than Mist Splitter, 18% better than Ishu, and 20% better than Finale of the Deep, or a bit more than 20% depending on how you're doing the math. That's not actually 20% better, because a lot of times for Genshin weapon rankings, this is at 100. And then these are at like 102, 110, 100, and then this would be like 130. So I think, yeah, it's 20% less, but 30% more, you know, statistics, math, etc. Her signature is very good. Other 5 stat sticks are very good. Finale of the Deep is also very solid. It's interesting to me that here, Calamity of Ishu is actually very close to Finale of the Deep. That's a little bit different than what I've seen. I've seen Calamity of Ishu being a little bit higher from other calcs, but it's still, this is still the correct order of what you're going to be wanting to use on her. Finally, for teams, there have been some very interesting developments in the crafting of teams for Skirk, and I've put together this tier list, which I am very confident in, to be honest. Skirk's teammates basically goes like this. You have Skirk, then you need Escoffier. She has her own tier. She is best in slot for Skirk by a lot. A lot of people say that Skirk is very replaceable in Escoffier teams, which is kind of true. However, keep in mind that Skirk is going to be doing 25 to 30% more damage than Ayaka while being way easier to play. So I do not think that, I do think that Skirk's strength is justifiable on the team. Like, you're going to feel like Skirk is a much stronger character than other options, but she will also feel worse without Skirk, but she will still feel worse without Skirk than Escoffier will feel with Ayaka. You know what I mean? Skirk without Escoffier is still worse than Escoffier without Skirk, but the difference is still big either way. So next is Furina, also pretty much a must, although definitely much less of a must than Escoffier. According to some calcs by the Genshin Scientist, replacing Furina on the team takes the team from 115k DPS to 106k. Which is not as big of a difference as I would have expected. I would have expected Furina to be a much, much bigger difference over Cinder City Thrilling Tales Mualani than she is. But hey, that's what we're calcing at. For a reference, 115k DPS, Moika calcs at around 130, 135 at the same types of investment. Veressa is about 109, Arlecchino, Clorand about 110, Neuvillette, Escoffier around 100. Sorry, Arlecchino and Clorand are at 100, not 110, not 110. Veressa is 109. Yeah, better not give anyone more fuel for my Clorand bias. So yeah, very, very crazy. And for Neuvillette's other premium team, actually I don't remember it right now. So yeah, she is comfortably in the second strongest DPS category, but we'll see how she feels as well when we actually get to play her. So yeah, Escoffier, Furina is in the second best tier. And then the third spot, I have all of these guys in here because they're all pretty close. Shenhe technically is cheating the best, but all of the others are really, really close. You can basically pick any of these and they're about equal as your fourth slot. You can also slot in one of these as a replacement for Furina, and that will suffice. Unfortunately, they're just really bad cryo 4-stars, so there just aren't really that great budget options. Kave is beating Dahlia here. Neuvillette, this would be Skirk as a sub DPS on Neuvillette teams. It is technically Neuvillette's highest damaging team, but it is significantly behind Skirk's other best teams. Xingqiu is a solid option, but he extends cooldown and the damage isn't as big. Plus, Skirk has basically infinite interruption resistance, so you don't really need that, and Escoffier gives plenty of healing, so you don't need that defensive utility that he brings. You can use Ayaka Burst as like a dual DPS thing if you really want to, but it's definitely going to be worse than just supporting Skirk. Barbara can hold Thrilling Tales and give a Hydra damage boost to Farina, but that's kind of sus. Ganyu. Yeah, Dahlia will be a solid option. He will enable a Calamity of Ishu for Skirk, which is a solid upgrade over Finale, as well as improving attack speed, which is solid. And then Charlotte's kind of like a really cope Escoffier replacement, providing heals and Thrilling Tales. It is a massive downgrade in DPS, but is still around 80k DPS, which is more than enough to clear, and still some pretty solid numbers. So definitely something that will work as a substitute until you can get Escoffier whenever she happens to rerun, if you don't currently have her. Chongyun's also a possible alternative teammate, as are Kaya and Rosaria. Chongyun reducing cooldowns, some solid sub DPS damage, Rosaria giving crit, Kaya just giving some damage. Candace gives a normal attack bonus, so she can also work. Might be better than a bunch of these options, actually. Layla can also enable Calamity of Ishu and do some decent sub DPS damage, provides a small damage bonus as well. I think Layla ends up being a bit worse than Dahlia, depending on how much cryo resonance you end up getting, as that relies on actually applying cryo on the enemy. So overall, there's like a lot of cope options that can kind of work. And I mean, sure, you could do sub DPS Ayato. Why not? Overall, I am really looking forward to this character. I think she's going to be very fun, very easy to play, very strong, as long as you can get together Escoffier Farina. I think people will be surprised at how strong she feels. I think people are really underestimating how strong Skirk will actually be, but we'll have to wait until we can actually play her on release, so make sure to subscribe for that. If you want to join me for the testing, you can join me live on Twitch, follow me in the description, and if you don't want to do any of those things, that is totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.